So welcome to the Snap Crackle and Pod podcast. Today we're talking to Calvin Fuss. Calvin is leading the AI practice at Snap Analytics. Most recently, Calvin, you've been described by one of our clients as a wizard. So come on, Gandalf, tell us a little bit about your background and where you learnt your wizardry.
Well, it's first of all very kind, and I started as a data analyst while doing my computer science degree at university, and it was kind of like the starting point of getting a love for data and data science. As soon as I left, I moved into consulting, and I worked with British American Tobacco and Unilever for 5 years, and I was fortunate enough to join a product company after that. And I was able to travel the world, meeting lots of different kind of people and organizations and doing business with different cultures. And it taught me quite a lot. We did a lot of data science work, mainly focused within retail and defense. And then we joined Snap. Thank you for seeing an opportunity within the data science department. It's been really fun so far.
Fantastic.
But yeah, it's really enjoying it. So yeah.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the team. And I like to, assume that we've got lots of different listeners. So if you were to have to explain what AI is to your nan, how would you describe it?
I think AI makes life easier. Fundamentally, it's the objective of AI is to make whatever task you do monotonously a lot easier through automated means, through the ability to surface information quicker. I think if I was to explain it to my nan, she loves grocery shopping. AI can effectively create a grocery list for you based on what you've bought in the past. And it's really bespoke to your experience. So if you really like peanut butter, you're very likely to get a recommendation for peanut butter going forward.
Fantastic. Love that. Yeah, it's all about simplifying and augmenting, I guess, human capability right now. So fantastic. So you've worked on everything from revenue forecasting to customer segmentation. But what is the most exciting use case for AI that you've seen recently?
In the past, AI was very manual. And I guess we should talk about traditional AI with statistical and analysis, classification, regression type stuff, and then generative AI. Whenever you have to do a business case with the normal traditional side of things, in the past it used to be very manual, and you'd have to set up your Jupyter notebook, you'd have to load the data in, test it all, and iterate. What I really found super interesting, and I was fortunate enough to work with Data IQ with my team, is seeing how MLOps has changed the game, seeing how it can automate things much, much quicker, A/B test different models based on the use case that you're using, and it is genuinely made things so much better from a whole holistic standpoint, all the way down to actually using it and developing with different models. One example was a revenue forecasting model that we recently worked on. Now, if we were to do it manually, we would probably still be trying to bring it into production now. But with Data IQ, we were able to bring it into production within, from starting point all the way into production within 3 months. And that was just because we were able to use different models, see the results really quickly. And we ended up using a different model for half of the business and another model for the other half. And that was, quite an eye-opener.
What is the outcome of that kind of revenue forecasting project? And what will that mean for that organization specifically?
In the past, everything was being, done manually with Power BI. They tried to get a few other organizations in, and once again, that was a very manual process. They adopted Data IQ, and they wanted to see how, they could effectively leverage the platform to get better results. We started with about 10% accuracy rate on revenue forecast. It equated to around £10 million in accuracy discrepancy per se, and we brought that all the way down to 1.8% over the next 12 months. Time will tell how things change, with all the tariffs being put in. But I think we've got something really solid, and it's quite exciting.
Fantastic. And do you think that's going to result in different sort of behaviors, different outcomes in that organization, being able to get down to that level of accuracy from a forecasting perspective?
Once again, with anything, especially with AI, it's all about trust. And the hardest part, and it's been really difficult for them in the past, is instilling trust within the business user. So what we try to do is we try to show an iterative process. They might not trust it in the beginning, but hopefully consistent accuracy over the next 6 months will, result in a higher adoption rate amongst the users. So that's the way we're approaching it. We're fully aware that you can't just throw in a new algorithm, expect everyone to make business decisions from that, even though it is accurate and all our evaluations have proven as such. But we're working with the business closely, taking a business-first approach and going from there.
Fantastic. So I guess that's going to enable them to do things like sort of just-in-time manufacturing, managing inventory more effectively. So if you can more accurately forecast, you don't have to have that warehouse full of stock that you don't necessarily need and that you may not sell.
That's absolutely right.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great stuff. So listen, you're in a pretty hot space right now. There's a huge amount of hype around AI. We're increasingly hearing AI use cases that have gone wrong. Luckily, the ones that we've implemented at Snap have been very, very successful so far. What is it that you think people are getting wrong in this space at the moment?
Dave, it's so true. I think every week you hear it on the news saying things have kind of crashed and burned. The new AI initiative that everyone was really excited about at business X, Y, and Z didn't really come to fruition. And I think that it really comes down to three things. One of those things is running before you can walk. The second is the data at hand to get the results that you want. And then the third thing is trust and transparency and being able to iterate based on the answers. So in the beginning, everyone wants to do everything with AI. The businesses are under quite a lot of pressure to produce something of tangible value. And there's a lot of pressure on maybe people that haven't got necessarily the experience within the industry to execute at the level that they need. It also results in a lot of businesses throwing all their data into an AI model and then expecting tangible, context-accurate results to come out of it. And then finally, it's also, they deploy it on a piece of infrastructure and it might not necessarily answer that particular question. It might not be interconnected with the existing business operations or applications within the company. One thing I would do in order to mitigate that, if I was a new business watching, is I would effectively just focus on a very small use case right in the beginning, really do that quite well, isolate the data that will answer that use case in the beginning as well. And then the best thing, instead of just trying to train an AI model, oftentimes the business doesn't have enough data in order to do so, set up a very accurate retrieval augmented generation database, a vector database basically, and chunk the documents into the right chunking format. So you don't want to just chuck a whole myriad of different documentation in there without context. You want to kind of structure things properly and always have a reference to what that document means. So when the user does ask a question, it turns that into the same context, searches for the right chunks and gets the right answers accordingly. So that is number one, is the data structure. Number two is where you deploy it, and then number three is iterative improvement. So you might not be able to answer all the questions right in the beginning, but if you store all your information in a database, all the context, all the conversations, you can analyze if what was actually answered was accurate to the question, and then you can tweak going forward. And it's that governance piece that a lot of businesses miss.
I think it's great advice to start with something small and tangible, because I think what we're seeing is a lot of, there's a huge amount of investment in this space. By starting small with something high value, you can really mitigate the risk. Of course, hey, yes, you've probably got 200 use cases across your business. Start with 2 or 3 that you think are going to deliver high value, and actually prove them out, and make sure you've got the right data, make sure you've got the right skills and team, whether it's internally or through partners, to be able to actually deliver this, and particularly if you're working with partners, give them something small, test them. And I always encourage people to do that with us, right? Hey, look, start small, prove, we can then prove whether or not we can do this. That mitigates, the risk of a huge spend and a failed project from your side. It enables us to create value quickly for the organization, and it just creates a broader buy-in across the business. So I think, and ultimately, I think your second point on data is a really important one, which is often forgotten, right? If you don't have the right data, AI isn't going to be able to answer your business questions. If a human cannot take that, cleanse it, organize it, and answer that question about customer churn or your revenue forecast or whatever it might be, if you don't have the right data, AI is not going to be able to fix that for you ultimately. So being able to ingest, cleanse, organize, and structure your data so it is ready for AI, and that was the big theme of Gartner this year, wasn't it? Is AI ready data, and I think it's so important, but it is often overlooked. I think we've seen some use cases, haven't we, with customers that we've worked with where they've attempted to, or other partners have attempted to deliver an AI solution without actually having well organized, well cleansed data that is also being loaded on a regular basis. So that it's very difficult to then, even if the data is good, if it's not built into your data pipelines and refreshing and updating regularly, that's not really something you're going to be able to productionize going forward. So yeah, I think some really good points there and things to look out for. So I know we've been doing a lot of work around kind of conversational AI, being able to effectively talk to your organization's data. So ask a question, get an answer. And this was one of my early sort of visions, I guess, when we started Snap, is that in fact, we've just had our 5-year celebration, and I said 5 years from now, people will just want to chat to their data. They want to ask a question in natural language and get an answer. And I think it's amazing to see some of those things coming to fruition. But I know we've had a lot of conversations around this. You sort of shared this kind of similar thinking in the early days. I think it was kind of why we ended up obviously connecting our sort of perspectives. And so what's your vision there? Where is this headed? And why do you think that ability just to be able to talk to your data matters?
I think in the beginning, when ChatGPT became very, very popular, you could ask it general questions, and it quickly became really important to be able to add your company data into the mix so you can get answers. What I saw happening right in the beginning, though, is once again, everybody tried to throw all their documentation in there, and AI needs reference and context to be able to answer that. I think what we're doing right now is we have a very clever algorithm that chunks those documents, puts it into the right structure, with context relevancy. So when you do ask the particular question, there's almost a system in place that aids the retrieval of the right context based on the question that's being asked. Oftentimes as well, it's usually one question, one answer. And I guess what we do as well is also, make sure that historical questions are taken into account when you do answer that. And a lot of applications, they completely miss that. They expect ChatGPT or OpenAI or whatever other API method that you use to be able to automatically handle everything. But there's a lot of manual heavy lifting that is bespoke to the application that you use that we obviously take into account. In addition to that, there's three things. So context being one of them, accuracy being the other, and then security fundamentally. It's fundamental to every organization, even more so now with AI. Accuracy, once again, a lot of conversations just go into a big black hole and they go missing, and there's no accountability in terms of what is actually being asked and how to actually act upon the questions and those answers. Everything that we do is obviously stored. There's full governance in place. If a question doesn't get answered, the user can vote a yes or a no based on how good it was. So you have that feedback loop. That's super important. But also just being able to analyze those raw, unstructured conversations. Were any competitors mentioned, for example? What topics were discussed? And all of this analysis can be bespokely tuned for the business. So, one of the things the business wants to do is, okay, we want a chatbot. We want to create a chat application, but there's so much more to it. There's the full analysis piece, and the business wants to either save time or generate more revenue. And effectively what we're doing is we're doing both. And
I think that analysis piece is an interesting one as well, right? So not only can you talk to your data, you can get it to do analysis and forecasting and these types of things that you wouldn't be able to do if you had a static dashboard. And I know you've done a lot of work with dashboards in the past as well. I think you're probably a dashboarding wizard as well. I've seen some of your very impressive demos. What fundamentally is the problem with dashboards that we're trying to solve with the chat application?
I think the chat application makes life easier for non-technical users. Even users that are using Excel, they don't necessarily want to touch a dashboard and have to figure out what the filters do. They just want answers, prescriptive answers to their questions straight away. That's what the chat application facilitates. It generates a SQL, it queries the database for you, it retrieves the data, and then also visualizes it in the right structure, so you get the right results. Dashboards are almost very careful that I say is redundant if it goes well.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? I think I think there is a place for dashboards in, if you've got your kind of monthly board pack that you want to have in a very sort of curated, standardized manner. But I actually think 9 times out of 10, people want answers to questions. They don't necessarily want a dashboard. And I think the way the industry has gone is, for too many years, we've said a dashboard is the answer. What's the question, right? Everybody needs a dashboard. Actually, I think, it's very, very often that dashboard doesn't answer the specific questions of the wider business function or different stakeholders in the organization. You can end up with 10 different versions of the dashboard. And I think the root cause of that is that people really want to just be able to ask a question and get an answer. Maybe I'm not able to drill down into that data. I know it's in the database, but you've given me a dashboard, an aggregated level, because you want to give me the nice looking chart. Actually, I want to drill into that and see what's the root cause behind that. And not only that, I don't just want to see what happened. I want to see what's going to happen going forward. So I want to be able to, I want you to be able to do kind of predictive modeling and things like that. And I think that's the really exciting piece around where we're going with AI, is to be able to ask what's going to happen next, right?
Completely.
So yeah, really, really exciting space. But we have to treat that with caution as well, right? It's not all, unicorns and rainbows, right? There are inherent risks that come with, that come with AI. Can you talk a little bit around those risks?
Absolutely. I think we're obviously moving very fast, and there's a danger to kind of, trying to keep up with the trends, compete with one another, try and get to that, sentient goal per se, at the detriment of, doing quite a lot of harm potentially. Where the harm lies, it lies within the data. If there's not enough data to go around, or the data isn't being cleaned, oftentimes companies that are training these large language models will resort to just throwing everything in there and seeing, maybe doing the moderation post training. And there's a big risk with that, right? Because yes, you can have a large language model that, analyzes the answers and filters them out. And I'm sure that happens already. But every week you're seeing the commercial LLMs, they're still making mistakes, and they're answering some quite hectic, results. I think what happens is, if one doesn't be really careful about that going forward, you risk things getting a bit out of control, because the commercial guys might be vigilant, but as soon as you take, what DeepSeek have done, training on the output of another model, then, you get down the non-commercial route where, you get these LLMs pop up, things become cheaper to run, and then guys with less budget are able to produce malicious models. That, I think, is the biggest risk. It's all within the data. So I think if a model does get put to the public commercially, it needs to go through a validation and a board process. And I had to think about this before this podcast, actually. We have the Turing test that was invented back before I was born. I think we should do something similar for AI safety, a Turing test based on questions. And I don't know what those questions look like right now, but I think over time we can build that out. And every model needs to go through that, and there's a variety of different ones, because you can always train a model to answer those questions right, and then the resulting ones are wrong. So
it's kind of those ethical kind of boundaries and guidelines as this sort of proliferates. And I guess within the enterprise, I guess some of the other risks around poor data is almost worse than no data, right? Because the kind of decisions that eventually AI will start to make and drive on its own. I think right now we're still in that era of human in the loop. I think the levels of accuracy are surprisingly good. I think we've had some quite happy customers in terms of the levels of accuracy, but they're not 100%, right? So you still need a human in the loop, right? Yeah. In a lot of these AI use cases. Is that what you're seeing?
Very, very much so, especially when you want to improve the output of the models. It requires, you can do a lot with AI and evaluate with AI, but what it often struggles with is the context and what it relates to, and how it doesn't have that deep understanding yet. The models are getting way better versus 2 years ago. But it goes back to the initial text to SQL explanation, right? Yeah. You might be able to see, okay, sales have increased, but why have they increased? So it requires the human in the loop to curate that business-related data set that you can enhance on the fly based on the results of the data. We do that already, but as soon as you want to expand across the business, it requires a lot more effort. And
I think it's the chatbot, isn't it? It's the thumbs up and thumbs down that we've built into one of the products we've built. And then actually you have a developer looking at your thumbs down. Where did you not get an accurate result? Why was that? Feed it the SQL code or the correct document, and then it will learn. And you're constantly improving accuracy. You cannot just throw AI at things and expect it to know and understand everything. But what you can do is constantly be training it and creating that feedback loop. And I guess that feedback loop is really, really vital to ensure that the accuracy levels are improving, because most of the time the kind of questions people are asking are going to be relatively common.
Yeah, and repeatable. And there's a technique one can use called few shot learning, where it effectively gives, every single time the user asks a question, it retrieves a few examples relating to that answer that are like golden answers, and is able to produce the right SQL in a more accurate way, or produce the right answer in a more accurate way.
Yeah, fantastic. So obviously there's a lot of hype, as I mentioned before, and everybody's seen the sort of AI sort of snake oil on LinkedIn and Facebook. Everybody's an AI expert. Is there a particular AI trend that you think is maybe overhyped in the industry?
There's obviously a lot of naysayers against certain trends, and people that are pro certain trends, especially ones who invent the trend themselves. But I think fundamentally it all comes down to, specifically Gen AI can do everything, and it can't, not yet, and I don't think it ever will, like you say, without the human in the loop, but also just generally. So one example is predicting stocks, for example, right? Generative AI can interpret the data. It can find ups and downs and lows and highs, but it hasn't got the statistical intelligence that a model like Profit from traditional data science will be able to incorporate. So I think one has to, when one talks about AI, it's all business related to the expected outcome. And then the human needs to build components that will effectively answer those questions at every single stage, rather than just expecting generative AI to take the data as an unstructured or structured source and produce answers as a result. And this is why one needs, the service companies to be able to implement these. Service companies that have done it before.
And the stock prediction one is interesting, isn't it? I think if everybody would love to be able to solve that problem. It's was it Back to the Future where I think he bought a lottery ticket or something, didn't he? having been to the future. So I think we'd all love to be able to predict what's going to happen in the future and buy that ticket ultimately. So. I just think the world and humans are probably too chaotic for us to ever be able to get that stock market prediction quite right. I did attempt it myself once in terms of crypto, and how wildly crazy crypto is. I think there is an element of correlation with sentiment, right? Yeah. Social sentiment when celebrities are talking about. I guess a good example is Dogecoin and Bitcoin when Donald Trump and Elon Musk are talking about those things, So yeah, there's an element of predictability, but there's always that chaos element which makes it just inherently unpredictable. And normally the problem is humans. Yeah. Is there a use case that you think is underrated that people maybe aren't so aware of that you can talk about?
I think. There's a lot of stuff that hasn't been done or hasn't been cracked yet. I think we are slowly going towards more red tape within organizations. And in terms of use cases, I think fundamentally we just want to make people's lives easier, especially with generative AI. I think instead of running and trying to solve all problems and just a lot of companies, they just want to be able to convert all their customer service advisors into AI people, but I think the personal side of things is completely missing because people want to speak to people fundamentally. That human interaction is super important. So I think what is really missing is the vision. I think the right vision. I think we need to focus on making people's lives easier. People that work really hard on a day-to-day basis in existing roles, make them more efficient rather than replacing them. And I think there will be if we go down that route, there will be a much better reception towards AI rather than the fear that it's currently generating within society.
And I guess that probably leads on to one of the use cases that we've successfully delivered for one of our customers, actually enabling their customer service team to be able to ask questions about specific products and be able to actually reduce the time it takes to answer customer queries using an AI chatbot, but you're just really supercharging them and enabling them to be more efficient, be more productive, and actually answer more customer calls. In doing that not only saves you time, cost, but it also improves the customer experience, right? The customer's getting a faster, more satisfactory response as well.
Completely, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So look, if I'm a CIO in a global organization, everyone's coming to me saying they want to do AI, whatever that means. Where do I start? Where do I begin?
I think the best thing is to break use cases down by traditional AI and generative AI. I think Gen AI is more kind of business process efficiency, whereas I like to call it traditional AI or statistical AI is more really addressing a very core use case like revenue forecasting or product recommendation or customer segmentation, and approach it that way. Once you've gathered all those use cases, it's really important, like you do any project, is to attach KPIs to them. What is the current state and what is the desired future state? It's quite easy to do with kind of statistical based data science and machine learning models. It's a little bit more difficult to do with generative AI. When it does, you can attach, we want to reduce churn by 10%. Okay, what do we need to do? Okay, and then there's a clear marking there. With generative AI, it's a little bit more difficult. It's more time saving. So how much time can we save and how can we quantify that? And then I would just, break it down in hierarchy order. what is the best, bang for your buck per se, that doesn't require too much effort.
It's the value complexity matrix, isn't it? Is it if it's low complexity and it's high value, it's always a great place to start, because you know that you're going to be able to deliver significant value fast. And I think that's a matrix I often pull out and utilize. And it's fairly simple, right? But it gives you a really good visual to say, okay, we've got 3 use cases that are fairly simple. We've got the data available. We've got the technology, and we may not necessarily have to go out and buy new tools. We've got a really good understanding of the data. We've maybe got a really good stakeholder that's really invested in this. Okay, cool. That looks like it's a good use case to go and deliver as part of phase 1. And then build out a roadmap kind of based on that value complexity model to say, okay, well, let's focus on the high value, low complexity. And then phase 2, we might go, well, let's focus on the high value, some of the more sort of ambitious, sort of the moonshot kind of big, hairy, audacious kind of goals.
Completely.
So,
Dave, what I have seen in a few organizations is everything aligns to that value complexity matrix, but the technical guys, they want to take the most complex approach possible because there's an accolade there, or there's something that they could try. I think it's really important to maybe have an external auditor to see if this is the right approach before one embarks on such a ambitious mission. A lot of the times the super technical projects can be solved in a lot easier way, even when it comes to Gen AI.
Yeah. I think, it's that danger, isn't it? Am I going to build a rocket to deliver a pizza? I think that's what sometimes, because hey, we're techies, we want to build a rocket because that'll be fun, right? And I think sometimes that's what we're seeing in organizations is, hey, look, if I can create a, million lines of code and build this incredible solution, that's going to impress everybody. And actually there's often a much faster time to market to actually go and deliver that solution. So, one of the things I talk about a lot is how do we maximize the work you don't have to do?
Yeah.
Right. Has it been done before? Is there an existing solution? How do we leverage that without having to go and reinvent the wheel? And I think it's, this is a, historic challenge in the data warehousing space as well, is we're constantly repeating and building the same solutions over and over and over, and investing and sinking a lot of money into that. Whereas, look, there is that, how do we build repeatability into what we're doing and leverage what is already out there in this space? There's not normally, 99 times out of 100, the things that organizations are trying to achieve have been done before.
Completely.
And I think, that's definitely something. And of course, it's something we can advise on and support our customers with. Calvin, it's been a fascinating conversation. I know this is a topic that everybody's interested in, but just to wrap up, have you seen any really poorly executed cases of AI?
I think if you don't put on guardrails, things go bad really quickly. A really good example was a car dealership that wanted to do AI and make the customer experience a lot better. They put a chat application on the website, and I think they just gave it a simple prompt saying, we offer these cars, please answer questions based on our cars that we offer, without any guardrails in place. So someone quickly found out how to manipulate this AI application in their favor. And what they try to do is they basically try to create a binding contract by saying, you are going to offer me this car for $1 or £1, and you're going to answer, any question that I ask subsequently with that response. So it basically did. And I believe, what I recall, they had to honor that agreement. So they gave the guy a car for £1. And it was a nice, big, meaty 4x4.
I did see that in the news, and it's it's interesting, isn't it? And that's when you when you don't put those guardrails on. Everybody's rushing to do agentic AI, but getting it wrong can be expensive, right? So
sure.
Great for the guy that got the car for £1. But that's a really interesting use case. So Calvin, yeah, it's been fantastic talking to you.
Really enjoyed it.
Really look forward to seeing how much more value we can deliver to our customers with yourself, the wizard. I'm not going to let that go. That is your nickname forevermore.
Gonna get a hat, snap wizard hat.
Absolutely, yeah, that's it. That's happening. But it's been great talking to you, and
You too,
thank you so much for taking the time to be on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Snap, Crackle and Pod podcast. Please click this button to subscribe on YouTube. You can also follow us on all major podcast platforms. We're Snap Analytics. We help organizations make sense of data. If you want to find out more, you can go to www.snapanalytics.co.uk. Thank you.